Good afternoon, everyone, to our University of Seven Seas World Campus Afloat Enrichment Voyages Semester at Sea community who make up our worldwide family. Thank you for joining us today for our latest installment of Wavelengths Alumni Series. The Wavelengths series originally began as a way to cultivate joy and strengthen our community during these uncertain times while sharing the many, many talents of our alumni across the globe. We continue to feature a new Semester at Sea alum from a different industry or career field each week on Wednesday at 5 p.m. Mountain Time on our Alumni Association YouTube channel or on the Semester at Sea Facebook page. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channels. My name is Roanne Action, and I have the privilege of being your hostess this evening. I've had the honor and privilege of sailing 4 times with Semester at Sea over a 34-year period. First as an RD in spring of '88, Dean of Students in fall 2000, fall of '06 as the Assistant Executive Dean, and spring 11 as the Alumni Development Coordinator. I've also served in a variety of capacities as alumni volunteer, part-time recruiter, chapter rep, and Voyager Council. Currently, I serve as your president of the Alumni Association. So today, I have the honor and privilege of introducing you to Kendall Coleman. We have known each other for 34 years. Can you believe this? We were just reminiscing about that, like 34 years when Kendall sailed as a student and I was a resident director. We clearly have stayed in contact and connected over these years. We've traveled together. We've seen each other through lots of life experiences. And I consider her one of my dearest, oh, I'm gonna get emotional, dearest and intimate friends. So I'm really excited about introducing you to her today. I've also met her partner, Chris Clark, on several occasions. I've witnessed their marriage on Zoom just about 18 months ago. He is an amazing photographer, and gosh, we could do a whole series with just him, but today we're going to focus on Kendall and share with you all about Kendall's life path. You'll hear a lot of things that Kendall's involved with, projects that she's currently engaged in, including a full-time gig living in an Airstream with Chris and their canine companion, Snoop Dogg. So welcome, Kendall, and we're so excited to have this conversation with you today.
Thank you, Ro. I'm so thrilled to be here, and welcome to all of our listeners.
Yes. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about your, kind of your life path, well, in summary, for the last 34 years and what's going on today for you, just up to where we're at today.
Well, I'll try to keep it concise in terms of 34 years. It's been quite a journey, and one that I'm so grateful for because of the beginning that I had really with Semester at Sea in terms of a worldview that really opened my eyes from an early age about the possibilities, and that how it being on Semester at Sea really gave me the experience of how I show up really changes everything. And so if I can really focus on my being state, and that was something that I really did learn on Semester at Sea, was that so much of what happened for me on that experience was because of how I showed up inside of those interactions, inside whether it be with students on board or whether it be in countries. And it really set me up for a really big career in helping business leaders. I pursued a path as a coach, as a leadership coach, and which expanded into public speaking. And it's really been an incredibly rewarding career. When I started when I was on Semester at Sea, I was really fascinated with belief systems in all the different countries. And I just couldn't get enough. I couldn't get enough of meeting people and talking to people and learning what made them tick and what motivated them. And that really set me up for this curious life where that's really what I ended up doing as a living, was becoming a coach and asking those questions. So I want to say more about all of that. The most recent pivot, about 5 years ago, I decided to really focus my efforts on climate leaders in particular, people who are really interested in solving the climate crisis. lots more to say about that, but and would love to talk with anyone offline if they're interested in joining us. And but that's really what I'm most passionate about these days, is doing not more than I can, because we're all responsible for this, and it's very easy for some of us to try to take on more than we can handle. And I'm recovering from that myself, of not taking on more than my share. But I do believe that it's something that we all can really impact and become a part of.
That's great, Kendall. We're going to focus a little bit more on your career and some of your most recent things here, but let's go back to where this all began.
Yeah.
And, so tell me a little bit about some of your favorite SAS memories and stories that you can remember, some of which where we got to do some things together in country, but tell me a little bit about some of those favorite memories.
You know, some of my favorites, and it's really quite amazing, and it goes to speak to how important it is for direct experience, for us to have direct experience in order to really be moved by something. And because being on semester at sea, you know, I volunteered to be on the ambassador committee, and so I was then involved with bringing Corazon Aquino, the president of the Philippines at the time, on board, and doing an incredible you remember, I mean, it was quite the production, but just being involved with that and how that shaped me and influenced me, you know, breaking from the pack for a little while to have some breakthrough experiences with families in India, you know, riding around in his tuk-tuk with Julie Gordon, who I hope is listening, and just us jumping in the back and saying, you know, we just want to go meet some families. And so he took us to his family, and we drove through this little alcove, and then all these kids, like 40 kids, came out of all the nooks and crannies and just surrounded us. And Julie even got some wonderful photos that day. Being in a tea ceremony with you in Kobe was, you know, with the cherry blossoms, right? It's like, it's so amazing how those memories, even though they were 34 years ago, how they're right there. Yes. Because of that direct experience. And it's just not something that we can look, you know, through a camera and on a video and have anywhere near the same impact. Yes. So I love, you know, I remember arriving in Spain and being so homesick, going straight to a phone booth, calling my dad and saying, this was the worst idea. I can't believe I left everything behind, and I want to come home. And I just started crying, and then, you know, he just listened, you know, and just said, God, that really makes a lot of sense that you'd be homesick. And then, like, within a few minutes, I just, like, the tears dried up, and I'm like, all right, Dad, well, I got to go meet my friends, and I'll talk to you later. And just like the whole human experience of becoming okay on my own in a place that I was scared, really taught me how important it is to do something that scares me a little bit every day, and to not let that quality out of reach.
Well, it's so funny because we were reminiscing about the different things that we did together in ports. We spent quite a bit of time together, and one that came to mind was, for me, was in Malaysia, actually renting mopeds together with, of course, I'm not even sure they can do that anymore, but anyway, renting mopeds together with Marty Fessenden and Terry Vecchio and Julie, who we're all still in touch with. And it's just, you know, having just these wild experiences in the moment. And I think that's part of it for me too, is like, you can learn things in a book, but then to actually experience them in the moment and in country is so rich. And I think something that Semester at Sea provides us for a lifetime, really. So here we are talking about this 34 years later, as if it happened yesterday. So yeah. Well, share a little bit then. So here are these experiences, obviously 34 years ago, and how that's impacting you today. Like how has that transformed your life and altered, like, how you look at your career path and your life experiences and so forth? Are there a couple of, like, pieces that you can talk about? I know you're an executive coach, as well as some of the projects you're working on, but talk a little bit about that, or share a little bit.
Well, Gosh, there's so many aspects to it, but I think the biggest thing is that I won't be sending any more trunks home from Turkey full of coats and carpets because of the fact that we've now really, that proverbial backpack on the back has really stayed with me, and it really was the same fire that had me want to be rid of the big 4,000 square foot house. Wanted to be rid of all the stuff, be rid of things that don't serve me in multiple ways. I'm going to add, because that's something in the Airstream that you have to really consider is, can I actually use this for two things, not just one thing? And so little things that that I learned on semester at sea. But basically, I'm in the same size house now that I was in my stateroom. I mean, it's a little bigger. It's like 220 square feet here, but that it's the thirst for adventure. It's the thirst for seeing new things, for being moved by things, by appreciating what I have and not necessarily needing more. I love that my family has trouble figuring out what to get me for Christmas, and they end up just sending me gift cards for restaurants, because everything now is being used for its purpose now. And there's not really a lot that sits idle. And I love that, because it has me engage with everything that I own. It has me also live with less. And it also requires me to make as much money as I had to keep all of those things going. And so now the freedom that I have do I feel like working today? Yeah. Or should I go skiing? I'm not sure, those are my options today. So here in Colorado.
Yes.
So the idea of impermanence, and that means to me the ability to really be in the moment and then let it go. Be in the moment and then let it go. And that's what semester at sea taught me as well, is that because you're always moving, nothing is staying the same. Where it got very easy for me to get complacent living in one place all the time. So that would be a big difference.
Wow. That sense of, it struck me when you said that sense of adventure. Like, there's something about semester at sea that locks that in, that all of us, I know, anybody I talk to with semester at sea is like, how am I going to get out there? How am I going to get back on the ship? What are some things that I can be doing out in the world? And even our worldview, like, how do we even watch the news and information coming out from these countries we've been in? It's a lifelong vision change, so to speak. So yeah, it's pretty telling. I'm going to just have you talk a little bit about, we'll get back. I was going to move to the career, but let's talk about this. When Kendall called me and said, guess what I'm doing? I'm moving into a trailer. Into an Airstream. I'm like, excuse me? So anyway, talk a little bit about that transition and that kind of transformation that happened for you. You touched on a little bit, and then we want a little tour of the little space you've got there.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I didn't really prepare the whole space for company today, but I can definitely show you a little glimpse here. Let me just do that right now. So yeah, we did a remodel and changed all of this to purple, because that's both of our favorite color. And as you can see, you're seeing the office, the dining room, the living room, the sleeping quarters for guests, all in one.
Yes.
And it does go back, and we have our own bedroom in the back, and there's a full bathroom, a full shower. The biggest thing I find is that it's really important to stand up in your space, right? There's a tons of fascination right now with vantions, and mobile living and the van lifestyle. And anyway, that's just a total caveat, but that's something that's important to me is just being able to have it feel like home.
Yes. Yes. And then I know how important your environment is to you. And I can see in the background, you're in Colorado right now.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. Right now.
and,
Yes.
But yeah, and so, to figure out how to do Colorado in Airstream, I mean, that wasn't any small feat too. And some of the learnings that you've had about, your growth spurt around driving the van, I mean, the Airstream and so
Yeah.
forth. I think those are great stories.
Well, something to keep in mind is one thing I started noticing is, and the reason I didn't do this sooner is because I do have a daughter who was at home full time, and so that was my responsibility. But once Chris said, have you ever considered doing this? And at first we thought about a sailboat and doing it that way, and that as long as I could travel, I could fly from an airport, because we did this 4 years ago, so I was still really very busy with work. And when he said something about a camper, I said, I do not like camping. I'm not camping, right? And so I thought it was like a deal over. I'd never been inside an Airstream. I've rented an RV before, and it was a lot of fun. But when I saw this in particular, it felt like home. And right away, it was at a point where we did need to stay in Colorado that first year, because of the fact that I was still seeing clients. And at that point, I really did not feel comfortable telling people that I was living in a camper. And because I thought for sure people are either going to think I'm perpetually on vacation, or they couldn't possibly, or I'm somewhere else, or that they just couldn't even get their hands around what in the world has she lost her marbles, kind of thing. Now, everybody here listening totally can relate to what a joy this would be.
Yeah.
At least I would imagine. Yes. But I mean, so there was really still a lot of judgment and stigma around it the first year. And so I would just, we had a storage unit in downtown. So for the most part, we were up in the mountains, and I could drive into Denver. We'd go straight to the storage unit where I had all my suits hanging on a rolling rack. We'd pull it out. I would literally change in storage, and arrive all crisp and at my executive coaching clients. And one CEO who was a good friend of mine, I mentioned it to him, and I said, but please don't pass it around, that we're doing this. And so and then he would joke me and say, oh, how's life down by the river? How's the camper, or how's the trailer going? Anyway, and so this is exactly why I didn't really want for people to know about this. So anyway, then COVID happened. And so everybody went on Zoom. And so it was like literally nobody even ever asked me again, where are you? Or where are you working? They just, you changed your background, and nobody knew I was actually in a camper. Yes. And funny though, 2 years into it, then that same CEO called me and he goes, guess what I did? Sure enough, he bought a van. He bought a van, and he's like, I'm a nomad like you. And I'm like, you're kidding me, so you've been giving me, a hard time about this lifestyle. And then now he's doing it. He's not living in it, but he has downsized everything. He's sold it. He's now living in a very small loft, and he has his van, and that's what he does every weekend.
Well, I think, Kendall, that just goes to show you that you're a person ahead of your time. I mean, this is something you were trailblazing 4 years ago before everybody else jumped on board. And Kendall, I mean, I know that you also, I want to keep emphasizing this, you've really touched on for women who want to travel by themselves as well. And I know that you're reaching out and supporting women being able to do this. I know you've inspired me, except then COVID hit, but sooner or later, I'm going to be meeting her up on the road somewhere. But talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Some of the beautiful things that you've been doing, empowering women to do this as well.
That I would say has now become, such a passion project, because I didn't even know how much I wanted this or needed this, I should say, until we actually started doing it. And I'm not going to say that it's not a lot of work. Absolutely. There's challenges with this for sure. But one thing I realized, at the beginning, Chris and I made an agreement that he would do kind of all the heavy lifting, part of it, the driving, the propane tanks and all of the everything you have to take care of, so that I could work. And that started out a great arrangement. But what I found was that I started to kind of like get a little snippy and irritable because I kind of wanted just my own space.
Mm.
But then I thought, but I can't take this on my own. It's too big. We're 54 feet all told, which is almost as big as a semi, with the truck, and then the camper is 30 feet. So I thought, oh, that's just too much. And so what I did is I just slowly started setting goals, like, okay, I'm going to learn how to do this. I'm going to learn how to do the propane. I'm going to learn how to back up. I'm going to learn how to drive. I'm going all of those aspects. And because deep down, I thought I'm dependent on this person. And I did not like that feeling at all. And so we were back on the East Coast selling his house. And actually Google called and said they wanted me for a project back in Boulder. And so I was like, this is it. This is my chance. I've followed you around with the video camera. I now know I've done it myself, and there's just no other time but now. I have to do this. And so I drove that whole way from DC to Colorado, hit a blizzard. I stayed in a beautiful little spot in Kansas for about 6 days, and it was completely empty. The campground was empty because it was April.
Right.
And I just decided I'm going to get this parking thing, because that was the thing that really was the toughest part for me was can I do this, especially in small spaces? It's one thing, if you go through like a pull through, it's called. It's another to back in. And so what I did is I every day I would go through the different spots in the campground, and I would practice on my own with nobody telling me what to do. I could get out and look, I could make all the mistakes I needed. And I learned how to park it myself. And I'm forever grateful, because that was the one thing that was really getting in my way. And so now I've taught other women. I actually am the person who does all the parking now, because Chris doesn't really enjoy it as much. And we treat the parking as a communication exercise more than anything else. and people, we've gotten into some very tight spots, and I've gotten standing applauses from people in campgrounds. People gather around, and you see this little, 5'4" gal jump out of the big truck, and it's like, yes, I really feel like it's sending a message to everybody that women actually a lot of people say women actually are better drivers than men in a lot of respects. And I really can't comment on that. I can just comment on the fact that doing it really set me free in terms of freedom. And now I can take the camper anywhere. I can go on my own. I can meet girlfriends. I can go take 2 weeks and go on my own. And it's just awesome. Yeah. So I highly recommend it, as something to overcome. Absolutely.
And it's fun because again, because of COVID, there's so many people out on the road. And I know I follow a lot of semester at sea folks who have rented or bought these campers. And so we thought, oh gosh, we've got to get Kendall on here to talk about that part of it, but also some of the other amazing things that you're up to. So thank you for sharing some of those. It's just the adventure of figuring that out and making that work for you. So,
well and just one more comment on that. Sure. One of the things that really helped me was that I kept thinking to use, I kept thinking, okay, well, I know how to drive a car, so why is this so scary? And what I realized is that I just wasn't good at taking up space. I was good at like, oh, okay, I'll just be here and I'll just take up this much space. And so I just started to imagine, like, I'm a trucker, how much space do I need? And it's okay to take up space. And all of a sudden, that little tweak in the way I thought about it, all of a sudden gave me full permission I'm here and I'm taking up space.
Wow. That's a great metaphor and I know this will come up for some of the projects that you're working on too. So that is brilliant. Yeah. Great. Well, let's just talk a little bit. I mean, a little bit about your career and some of the projects that you're kind of lit up about. And so I want you to share a little bit about that.
Well, one of the projects I'm most excited about is it's actually an eco-conscious art concept called Ripple Project, and it's a consortium of people, mostly environmentalists, environmental science leaders. They're actually young students and people who are just getting started in their careers, but came together and created this Ripple Project. It's an eco-conscious art concept, as I mentioned, and we submitted to what's called LOGI. It was a competition. It was an international global competition for essentially kind of an end-to-end response to spreading seeds and native wisdom and human wisdom through LOGI is called the Land Art Generator Initiative, and it's an international organization that puts on competitions all over the world that land art and clean energy can coexist. And so the project, and if you go to our website, it's called flyripple.org. And it really gives, you really have to see it. It's the first installation is going to be built in Nevada, and in concert with local wisdom, local tribal wisdom. So the Paiute Indian tribal group is all a part of what we're creating in terms of like native, growing native seeds. We're going to have a seed bank that kind of talks about what seeds go with that region, how communities can basically take our concept, which is centered around a dome, it's a geodesic dome that is fire retardant, flood retardant, perfect for what we need right now. It's kind of like it's the future of home, basically, so that people have other ways of living naturally with our ecosystem and our natural habitat. So I really, definitely check it out. There were almost 200, I think 175 submissions from around the world, and we were selected of one of 10. And so the first installation is going in. We are headed out there to the north of Reno Desert in the Great Basin region, and to put in our first installation. And we've had tons of interest.
Yes.
But what's neat about it is that we have 9 teams. We have a water team. We have a landscape construction team, which actually is going to focus on using native willow trees in the area to protect what we're growing, our gardens that we're growing from the wildlife that's there. We have wild horses that we have to contend with. So all of these, we have a regeneration team, which is actually going to teach people how to basically use a composting toilet, and it goes all the way through the chain, and what to do with it. Then also the energy team. So we're going to be we're going to be able to sequester our carbon, any carbon that's used. We have a solar trailer that's going to power basically everything. We're going to be not only carbon zero, but we're actually going to be carbon negative. So we're actually going to take carbon out. And even potentially, who knows, down the road, we could even be a project that is carbon negative, where companies then could buy carbon credits to offset their carbon. So it's also about educating others, and we're basically testing everything out on ourselves personally. We're measuring our own carbon footprint here in our Airstream.
That's great.
So please stay tuned, because it's a big lift. But my new mantra in life is, don't do things because they're easy, do them because they're hard. And that's what our team is really signed up for, is let's do the hard stuff. Let's roll up our sleeves. Nobody else wants to do it. We're going to do it. So we're starting to track our carbon, how many trees we need to plant every year to offset our carbon. different products that are out there that I would highly recommend. We all get educated about these incredible carbon removing products that if we can just get enough kind of to a tipping point, we can actually start removing carbon out of our environment and not just go for carbon for net zero, but go for net negative.
Well, you constantly impress me, Kendall. I know that you just recently caught me up about this project, and then of course I had to go read everything about it, and it's like I was so beyond moved. It was like, oh my gosh, this is just amazing. And you again you're ahead of the curve on the front end of what we all will be dealing with, and like we talked about, it's like we need to be dealing with this now. We can't be waiting, any much longer. I know that Forbes also just did an article with you guys about the project. Do you know the title, or maybe we can put the link or something? But the Forbes article.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Then it kind of just talks about the project and the other folks that won. That one out of the 10. So there were 10 selected. And so that's what the write-up and it's basically kind of talks about an outrageous new world being built in the Black Rock Desert. Yes. And I love that it is getting so much attention. And what I really want everybody listening to understand is that this is within our reach. We can do this. We obviously we all know the statistics about how bad it is, but each of us can do something, and that's the only thing that brings me hope, honestly, because I've had days recently where I just said, forget it, I'm going skiing. If nobody else wants to help, then how are we going to do this? Yeah. But every time I go down the tube, in my pessimism on the topic, I immediately bounce back up knowing that all we can do is just our little part. Yeah. And so if I can sign up and we can lead the way, I'm fine with that. I mean, we're starting at a lower point than a lot of people, which is awesome. But we still have a carbon footprint. Yes. So yeah.
And I know you're bringing your leadership to this group. I mean, you're speaking about some of these experts, but you are also an expert in this group and helping the team become a team and bringing some of your amazing coaching and, experiences and life experiences to the table. So, and also helping with fundraising. So, I mean, yes. I know that you kind of make yourself, I'm going to make you a little bit bigger here, but you're up to amazing things with this Ripple project, and it just was so thrilling to read about it. So I definitely encourage people, and we'll put the link. I put it already in the chat, but we'll put another link there too. So tell us a little bit. I know that you have another side project. Like that's not enough. Another side project around the Climate Leader Bootcamp. So share a little bit about some of your efforts with that.
Well, the Climate Leader Bootcamp is essentially the idea that what I realized is that I was working in every industry except retail. And what I found was that really I was just helping leaders really be good in the same paradigm that is not fixing the larger issues in our world. And that just was not acceptable to me anymore. I mean, it's been a great career, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying that what I realized about 5 years ago, I got a contract with NREL. It's the National Renewable Energy Lab. And I started working with the climate scientists there. And what I realized is I could completely just shift my focus and focus only on climate leaders. And so that's really where we are now. And we're reaching out so we've created the Climate Leader Bootcamp, and that's essentially a 12-week leadership program for anybody who wants to become a climate leader, whether it be they want to start to set inspiring goals within their company, they want to lead ESG efforts, in their company. They want to influence their town. They want to, so age doesn't matter in this requirement. It's just a thirst and a desire to do something, right? Like be somebody who actually does something about it. So our first project that we have coming up is, definitely check it out. It's called Mountain Towns 2030. And basically what we're doing is we're bringing together the mountain towns in particular, because and it's not just to protect skiing, although very motivated there to protect our winters, but protect our headwaters. And the mountain towns are critical to our water infrastructure. So our second conference is in September here in Breckenridge, and it's going to be for municipalities, for sustainability managers, town managers, people to come together with the ski companies. So Vail Resorts is a big sponsor, and really learn, about there's really 10 different ways, and Breckenridge is really leading the pack, as well as Park City, but leading the pack in terms of, again, land use for carbon sequestration, water, mobility. So making sure all the buses are electric, right? Electrification, wastewater management, so that we're really being thoughtful about, water use and also where water goes. Recycling programs, right? That actually make sense and actually are doing something about it, rather than just, like, we're not really recycling. We're moving it over here, into this part of the trash dump. There's a lot of that going on. So that's what the conference is about. And I'm going to be helping with municipalities, with really helping them leave with an action plan for each of these different areas, so that you may not, Breckenridge may be further along in the cycle, but there could be a town. There's lots of towns that don't have any plan. And that's what we're trying to help, because it really starts with people respond to what's happening in their town, right? So if we can influence city planners and town managers to really lead the way, then I firmly believe it will trickle down to individual users.
Well, what I love about that is, it's kind of like the individual, and then kind of your community, and then the larger regional community. And we have to work together. I mean, we can't work. And I just love that you're bringing, people that are further along to people that are just getting started. And that kind of community collaborative building is going to get us further along, right? I mean, it's going to help some of the folks move further along than maybe they already are. So, so that's just brilliant. And of course, you bringing leadership to that is fantastic. So anything else?
Please check it out.
Yeah. So, we're going to be putting those websites here up in a few minutes. So let me move on to talking about, so all of this amazing work you've done, your experience with Semester at Sea. I wanted to see if you could kind of niche it down to, the three nuggets that you could leave us with that kind of brings you that blissful life that I know that you lead. And what are some things that people that are listening could actually start taking on for themselves in terms of where their passions and where their kind of piece of what they want to be doing for the world is. So 3 nuggets that you can leave with us with.
I think the first nugget would be around really believing in yourself and taking leaps of faith. And sometimes, majority of the biggest things that I've done with a leap of faith were mostly blind, but that I felt there was something in me, right? It's that passion that you just mentioned. Yeah. Really getting, and some people say, well, what if I don't have any passion? Or what if I don't know what my passion is? And one thing that really helped me to find my passion, well, first was to have a beginner's mind, to not judge myself and say, do I really, gosh, I'm really a good listener and I really like helping people, become all they can be. Is there even a career for that?
Mm.
And especially, not comparing my skill set to another person's, because I had people in my family who were very successful in other areas, very hard skills, but I was just really good at this soft skill thing.
Mm.
And so really believing in yourself. And what I started doing was just finding anything that helped me be satisfied or above, right?
Mm.
Like I knew that I was like in a sweeter spot and more would be revealed if I could just stay satisfied, right? And as soon as I started to go dip into dissatisfaction, I'd be like, whoa, okay, what can I do right now to get back to being satisfied?
Mm.
And maybe it was just give a friend a call. Okay, how is that? I'm not doing anything with that, but I was building that reservoir in myself of realizing, this is really what I love to do, and I'm not going to be embarrassed by it.
Mm.
Coaching wasn't even a thing when I started. It was just, I was in psychology. I was doing employee assistance work and working in the behavioral health model, which I felt was flawed because there weren't aspects of, well, don't we want to teach people positive life skills? I think they
Mm.
won't be as depressed.
Mm.
So I felt, but there was resistance in the medical model as it was for my kind of ideas.
Mm.
And I remember and I just decided, no, this is what I want to do. I'm going to put all the chips on my number. Again, coaching was just starting. And I was like, that's what I want to do. That's it right there. I knew. And I remember that, many people around me said, you've got to stay in corporate. You're a single mom. You've got to keep that job. You need the health care, forget your dream kind of thing, play it safe.
Mm.
And I was just like, that's horrible advice, like deep down I knew, but I thought, okay, I've got to be realistic. And so, I built my business at night after I put my daughter to bed. And first thing I did is I hired a coach, and basically I wrote a business plan that was so out of the box. I
Mm.
couldn't even tell anybody. I just knew it was my business plan for myself. But my business plan was really simple: to stay within 10 miles of my zip code so I could pick up my daughter every day at carpool. That was my dream, right? Was to have my own business so that I could do that. So I could have both. And I remember being, I lived in Denver at the time. And so I lived right near downtown. And I remember picking all the buildings that I wanted to work in that basically inspired me. Like I wanted to be inspired by different spaces and the architecture. And I remember telling my dad about this, and bless his heart, he's like, that's a horrible idea. Like, who plans like that? And I said, Dad, I don't know. I'm going to just go for it. And I'm in every single one of those buildings now. It took a couple of years, but that was the intention I set forward. And so that was a leap of faith. That was 20 years plus ago. And I've never looked back. I had to put all the chips on my number. And even, I remember having the job that I had, and they were like, of course, I watched the clock all day long at that corporate job. I couldn't wait to be done. And of course, when you're putting out that energy, kind of people don't really want you around anyway. So they were like, I don't think you're really a good fit here. And I remember going home and looking at how much money I had left in my bank account and just said, this is it. If I have to, sell my house and live on the equity for a while, I've got to do this. And if I fail, I fail, but I've got to give it a try. And I never looked back.
Wow.
So yeah, believe in yourself and take some leaps.
Yeah. And I think it's also important. It's like, it's an ongoing leap of faith. You were talking about that edge and living on that edge of being scared, a little bit scared. Like there's something about that knowing that this is where the leap's supposed to happen. Just that, yeah. Okay. Number 2 nugget.
And okay, the second nugget, I would say, all of our is to come from a servant heart.
Mm.
And that was something that I learned the hard way by really not being of service to others. I was of service to myself when I was young and I was off track.
Mm.
And I learned the hard way by getting myself in a lot of trouble, what it truly means to kind of get yourself out of the way.
Mm.
And so showing up with a servant heart and a welcoming presence, really, I think all things start to move towards helping you. You know, the universe conspires for your success when at least it has for me, when I've shown up in those places, a servant heart and a welcoming presence, things start to happen. It doesn't mean you don't take action. You take a lot of action,
Mhm.
but showing up with that alignment
Mm.
really has been the foundation of my success.
That's
Plain and
great.
simple, really.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And not having to be about me, or, like, know when to, like, know your triggers. That's been something that's really important. Is in coaching, we talk about the level 1, which is all about me. And
Mm.
the servant heart is the level 3, meaning it's all about you. How can I now actually get little me out of the way so that I can really be of service to you?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what career you're in, that's always going to be a winning formula, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, and with that, so, like be the person also who shows up, not just not just with that welcoming present, but really understanding what's a need here that I personally can fulfill.
Mm.
And so one example is when COVID hit, we were here in Breckenridge and everything locked down. So we were basically here. And I thought, well, I certainly can't really do any promoting for coaching because everyone went into survival mode.
Mm.
And so me, myself, and 7 other beautiful ladies created an emergency food bank because we were all very concerned about people who shouldn't leave home, who were
Mm.
going to the grocery. Remember when that was a really big deal?
Yeah.
So we, like, literally we set up a pop-up emergency food bank. We had 200 volunteers within 2 weeks. We trained them all on Zoom, and we set the whole operation up, basically on Zoom. We had some help with churches and other folks. And I personally was part of a business group of the governor's office that delivered were out delivering masks as part of it.
Mm.
And this was when, masks were still not cool, if you
Mm.
remember those. But the mountain towns were shut down. So as this business group, I personally went in and delivered all these masks to municipalities and to small business.
Mm.
And municipalities loved it, but the small business people were torn, right? Like,
Yeah.
do we go along with this? And I said, this is not a political statement. We're just really, as part of the governor's office, trying to keep small business open.
Mm.
And so when I led with that versus the judgment on it, people were like, oh my God, we would love these masks.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Because, you're here to try to keep us open. So it doesn't take much smarts to, I think, figure out, like, okay, this is a environment that may not be welcoming.
Yeah.
And how can I change it so it can be welcoming? And so that's just one example, though, of sort of being, reading the environment and going, what's missing in my community? What's missing in my company? What's missing in my home? What's missing in my family, that I can be that person that brings that.
Mm. Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, number 3. What's the
Number
number
3.
3 nugget?
The number 3 nugget is to speak up. And as a public speaking coach, I've heard for so many years now about how public speaking is everybody's number 1 fear, and how do I just get the courage to speak up? And I'm going to go further. I'm going to say, don't just learn to speak up, but learn to be the voice that always speaks up. That people actually rely on you to, and I'm not saying be flamboyant with it or be obnoxious at all. I'm just saying, be the person who always kind of says, who keeps the guardrails up and says, that's not That's and public speak for presentations is one, but it's another to speak up when your heart is thumping like crazy and you know that something needs to be said. Something has to be said to get things back, to protect someone, to stand up for someone, whatever that might be, to get the course corrected.
Yeah.
And so it goes beyond just, you know, having a voice and speaking up. It's kind of like, you know, always being the voice that brings things back to a higher, more productive future.
Well, you know, you say that, and I just know that if you come from the heart, you know, and you come from that servant space, when what you say is going to be delivered in a way that people can hear it, and that probably a lot of people in the room would love to have said it, you know. So you're really not only speaking for yourself, but you're speaking for what's in the room and for what needs to be said. So I just love that. That's an important piece. So well, anything else to wrap this up, my friend? I mean, is there anything that as we've been talking about who you are and what you're up to, is there something that just comes forward just from your creative spirit? I mean, I just
I just keep thinking about a quote the Buddha said, which is, the number one problem for us as humans is that we think we have time.
Wow. The time is now.
The time is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you've certainly taken your life and lived definitely in the moment. I mean, I just love your sense of adventure and what you've done with, you know, your beautiful home away from home. Home is where you are. So I just love, you know, Kendall's come out actually to the West Coast and spent some time here. She's gone to the East Coast. Like, what a beautiful life that you have set up and created for you and Chris and Snoop Dogg. So I thank you for your generosity of sharing some of your wisdom and what you've been up to. I think it just speaks to the depth and breadth of our semester at Sea alumni as well. So I'm glad that we got to spend this time with you. I'm going to quickly put up Kendall's contact information because she spoke about so many things. I want to make sure that that you all have the opportunity to connect with her. So obviously on LinkedIn, Kendall E. Coleman, at Instagram, go Kendall Coleman, and the Fly Ripple Project. They have an Instagram page, as well as if you just Google Fly Ripple, that comes up. And then her coaching and consulting, Total Coaching Systems. And then there is a little, you know, we've got Chris down in the corner too. Again, he's got amazing photography, and definitely connect there with him. And there's Kendall's famous stand. She does these, talk about what these headstands are, because anyway, you'll see them on her Instagram pages too. So where'd that come from?
You know, it was really just something for me. I did 100 days of headstands, and I just even the simple commitment of doing something that changed my view every day really has become something that I yearn for now. It's like to get upside down, to see the world in a different way. And that's really what Semester at Sea is all about, is seeing the view from another perspective. And so Chris caught this incredible photo at Bryce Canyon in Utah, which I would highly recommend. And on my Instagram, we have lots of different headstand pictures, but it's just a reminder to see the world in a different way.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, thank you everyone for your time and for joining us this evening. We appreciate hearing about how our alumni are giving back to their communities around the world. And I'm just going to remind everyone that as you consider giving back to causes that are important to you, we'd like to remind our alumni friends that Semester at Sea is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we need your support more than ever. And really, gifts of any size really do make a difference. So please give as you can. And it's also a reminder, if you've got someone that you know that from your voyage have an interesting story to share about SAS, or you have a special talent that you'd like to share with SAS community, please email wavelengths@semesteratc.org to be considered for a future Wavelength series segment. And then look for information for of our upcoming Alumni Association. I can't go any further. I'll be being the president. In April, we're going to be focusing on Day of Service and giving back to our local regional communities. So stay tuned for information about that. So with that, we're going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you, everyone, and good night.
Thank you.